Okay, it's 10:30, so we will get started. We are on sharing my screen right now, so everything seems to be working all right. So I'll just start with the presentation. My name is Ewan Geddes, and I'm a high school teacher in the Toronto District School Board. And what I'll be going through today is looking at how to enhance or how to help the students become more globally aware and become global citizens. And a tool that I came across last year was a interactive simulation from the Canadian Red Cross. And I think that it does a great job of helping the students become global citizens. Before we do get started, I know Paul mentioned or read out the land acknowledgement. In a different part of Ontario, so I'd like to read out mine. So, as a settler and a treaty member, I acknowledge that I am hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Wendat. I also recognize that the enduring presence of all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. Okay, so to get started, we're going to just acknowledge a few key points on how we can um, enhance our classroom lessons and activities to support global citizenship, and a few key points that came out from a magazine in Ontario from the Ontario College of Teachers highlighted 10. And these were for all courses, but going through them, you can see how they are very geographic in nature. And I've highlighted a few of the key ones. So, discussing current events. This activity we'll be looking at brings in key and current events, and these events will more than likely continue into the future as well, unfortunately. Recognizing Awareness International Days, using maps and globes as educational tools, so that helps create the global citizen in this activity. When the students are examining the different issues around the world, they can use the maps and globes to identify where they're located, understand the geographic perspective, and the spatial significance as well, exploring cultural backgrounds. So this activity will bring us through that. It is a project-based activity with international focus. So again, these are not that we have to do these steps every lesson or every activity. It's important that we try to incorporate them as much as we can. Last few are global statistics, so we're looking at numbers and infographics around the world, and then having a discussion about these global issues. So this simulation that I will be going through with you and you will have a chance to explore will address these key points. Canadian Geographic Education has done a very good job also of creating a framework in which we can encourage our students to become more globally aware. And this is found on their website, and it can be applied from K to 12. So this link here, if you click on it, it'll bring you to the Canadian Geographic website learning framework. And the key points that I'd like to highlight that will be covered in this session will be that the students will be participating critically and coming up with a sustainable way of living, looking at the world views and social justice. It is problem-based learning, so there is a problem out there and the students are encouraged to come up with a strategy that they best think is appropriate in solving it. And then we'll also be looking at geospatial skills. So in the communication piece, students will be able to use a variety of technologies, such as GIS, if they wish to make a map of the situation. Okay. So this is from the Canadian Red Cross. It's Forced to Fight, and it examines humanitarian law. It's important to examine the humanitarian law. We'll get into that in just a bit. So this is an online simulation. Students will be given 4 different scenarios that they can go through of situations that teenagers are going through in different parts of the world. And they'll be engaged from the humanitarian aspect on what countries are doing, what organizations are doing in those countries, and what other countries outside could be doing and should be doing to help. One thing to keep in mind is that we each, as teachers, teach a variety of students from a variety of backgrounds. So we have to be aware that this is we are teaching sensitive material. We need to set the stage for the students beforehand and understand that some of our students may have gone through or may know people that have gone through some of these simulations in real life. And so we need to develop strategies on how to teach the sensitive material. So some things that the students will be doing that are very sensitive in nature. In the scenarios, they can go through some sexual and gender-based violence issues. There's one dealing with recruitment of child soldiers, refugees, and this is what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned that scenarios that students will be going through now will most likely happen in the future because they deal with these issues that don't look like they'll be ended anytime soon. So it is very, very current in that respect. So these stories, as I mentioned, will take the students through the difficulties and the decisions that some of these students have gone through. So before dealing with this, it's very important that the teachers go through what their board has set up for the direction of dealing with sensitive material. I know the Toronto District School Board put something out, a little old now, back in 2014, but the United Nations has something that might be useful if if your board's document is a little old. This one here is 10 steps for teaching sensitive topics to students, and it's from UNICEF, and this is applicable for all ages, K to 12. The focus of this tutorial, this simulation, is high school, of course, but these are strategies that you can go through. I won't read through them all, but it is allowing the students, giving the students a heads up onto what to expect from the situation and the parents, making it a safe and comfortable area for discussion, and setting up rules, especially not to target specifics from specific groups that we see in the video, because it could lead to some negative generalizations. Watching the students and so on, but also some key points that I want to have is having some breakout moments. So if it seems too stressful, having some breakout moments. Also, in the activity, I'll be sharing their moments where the students can actually, it's independent, but they have a chance to work and discuss in groups, and that is often a great stress relief. And then, of course, having some closure to the activity. Okay, so those are some things that you can go through when you are introducing your students to some sensitive topics. Okay, so excuse me, we're getting into why teaching humanitarian law. One of the biggest things that the Canadian Red Cross has found is that not enough people are aware of international law, what it means. Do our laws apply elsewhere? Do other people's law apply here, and so on? So just not knowing what is out there. And from a quote from the Red Cross is, youth make up the bulk of the present and future fighters. Finding innovative and locally adapted ways to reinforce norms of humanity among them including via digital media, is essential. So this activity is to bring our students, make them aware of the situation, and have them then communicate through social media or other means possible solutions to encourage the stakeholders involved to come up with a real viable solution. And here's just a Ted Tiny from the Red Cross and what his rationale for this.
So important now because the nature of conflict continues to evolve and changes. And although there's less conflict in the world today than there was 20 years ago, the visceral nature of conflict has heightened, which defies reconciliation of communities that have been divided by armed conflict. And so when you look at why the breaches occur, the top of the list is ignorance of the law.
Okay, so that's just a short clip. Hopefully the other clips I have later on, the volume works better. You do have access to this slideshow, so that if you want to go back to those slides, those videos, and listen on your own device, it might be a little bit better. So in the simulation, there are four stories to choose from. There's Anna from Africa, and in each of the situations, there are teacher resources to help the students. So I'm just showing you the example of what you will see on the website when you get there. So you'll see humanitarian law with regards to her specific situation, some Canadian Red Cross lesson plans that are set up for Anna's situation. Another one is Tam from Southeast Asia, dealing with armed conflict. And again, you'll see similar resources available to you as a teacher and for the students to further their awareness of the situation. Nora from the Middle East, dealing with peer pressure and becoming a refugee fleeing a conflict area. And the last one, which was recently added, is Miguel's story from South America, dealing with environmental issues and his situation. Does he stay with his family? Does he join the armed groups there? And again, with this one, we'll see the resources that are applicable to his situation. I'm definitely going to give you time to go through these in detail. Okay, so before we go any further, I would, if you have a pen and paper, you can, or a better mind than mine, you can keep aware of your answers. I'd like you to follow, how much do you know about the rules of war? So what do we know? And I like to show this at the beginning of this scenario with my students, so just to get a baseline of where the individuals are. Okay, so we'll start right. Oops, so there we go. Okay, so we'll introduce the students to some of the legal situations of how to engage in war, and then they can apply it to current situations that are going on. There is this slide, and it's 10 questions. I would strongly encourage that you go through these questions here. It will, again, some of those answers we got from the slide presentation, but there's some other questions here. So I would like you to take the time, a few minutes, to go through this. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can answer this also. And then maybe we can get back to it in just a moment. So I'm going to answer my questions in the slide as well. And then let's see how we did as a percentage. Do we get 100%, 80%? And I like how it gives you the right answer immediately. And we can see how it's social and environmentally connected. Okay, just a minute here for everybody to finish up. And then it gives you your results. So just closing mine down. Were people able to complete theirs? I hope so. Okay, so I'll move on again with the slides so we can go into having a look at what the activity will look like when the students are participating in class. So I'm hoping people came close to 100%, and if not, it is a teachable moment, and we can go back and do some further research to ensure we get 100% next time. So what the student activity looks like. They'll be getting started. They'll be clicking on Forced to Fight, which will open up the scenario. Then the students will decide which scenario they would like to choose. And then they'll go through the stages of the scenario, reading the questions, the situation, and then doing some further reading of supporting information to make a better educated choice as opposed to just guessing on how to answer the questions. They will reflect on their attempt at the end of the session, and then they'll just keep track of why they made those decisions that they did. What information did they use to decide which pathway to go down? Then I have a list of questions that they can do in groups or with a partner. So this is a de-stressing moment for the kids and a collaboration, so they can talk to each other about how the whole situation made them feel. And then at the very end is their reflection piece, which they reflect on what they've learned by going through the situation and what possible solutions they would have or they would like to suggest to the stakeholders involved, and then they would submit it as a final evaluation for me. So what this activity looks like, right down here. So if we click on the activity link, take you to a Google Doc, and I'll try to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay, yeah, there we go. Oops, moving slow. So here's the situation. We'll get started. There's a little brief for the students to read about the individual scenarios and which one they would like to pick. Then there's the discussion they have. So at the end of their journey, they reflect on their decisions. And then in groups, I have some guiding questions for them. How did it make them feel with this decision-making process? Have they been presented with types of situations like this where it didn't matter what they decided, it was not the best, like no solution was a good solution type of thing? And then how can individuals make an impact on the governments and so on? Then their evaluation is they would put their communication piece, and I suggested for my students to use ArcGIS Online, which is to create a story map, which is a great way of presenting their information, and they can bring in the maps and globes that way as well. So to get started, I'm going to take you through, and please feel free to explore too. So Forced to Fight, and this is the home page it brings us to. I'm going to go through the teacher side of things first so you can actually see all of the resources available to you. I'm showing you how to use it, but if you'd like to refresh on how to use Forced to Fight, there's some more information here on how to deliver this activity. Okay, so that's very supportive for later. I'm just going to go back to the home. Oops. Under teacher, when we go to teacher resources, there are quite a few resources that you can have a look at. A very good video to show before getting into this situation is having a look at this little video, Rules of War. I will not play the whole show, but just so you can see what it's about. It's a great way to set the foundation for your students.
Humans have resorted to violence as a way to settle disagreements. Yet through the ages, people from around the world have tried to limit the brutality of war. It was this humanitarian spirit that led to the first Geneva Convention of 1864 and to the birth of modern international humanitarian law. Setting the basic limits on how wars can be fought, these universal laws of war protect those not fighting, as well as those no longer able to. To do this, a distinction must always be made between who or what may be attacked and who or what must be spared and protected. Most importantly, civilians can never be targeted. To do so is a war crime.
When they drove into our village, they shouted that they were going to kill everyone. I was so scared. I ran to hide in the bush. I heard my mother screaming. I thought I would never see her again.
Every possible care must be taken to avoid.
Okay, so this video then goes through some other scenarios that will be addressed in the in this resource, in the simulation, and it's a really good point to make sure that the students are aware of the legality of war and the specific rules that go into it. There are some other resources that are very useful in some background information for your students and dealing with current issues that are going on. Some videos here so that the Ukraine issue, Afghan issue that are continually going on, some other sensitive material on how people are allowed to act during war. So this is again some other supporting material that is very useful in going through. With the particular scenarios themselves, when we were talking about the different situations. So these are the clips that I put into the slideshow. So when we look at Anna's experience, for example, there's some specific resources for Anna's situation on humanitarian law and how and what is expected. There are lessons to support this information. When we go on to the Red Cross lesson plans, there's some other information here, invisible women, legal principles. Again, the more information, depending on how long you have to deliver this, the more detailed and in-depth your students can go with it. Then there's the additional resources where they can get some more information. And each scenario has the same same layout. There's resources from the Red Cross, lessons, activities, additional resources. Nora's experience, again, explore these to see how you can change them, modify them to best meet the needs of your students. But if you're time constrained, go through these, understand, and you can deliver them as is. And then there's just the links, the organizations that helped in the production of these very successful, useful resources for your class. Okay, so that's the teacher side of things. I'm just going to go back to home and go to the student side of things. So depending on the age of your students, I teach high school, so over 13 years of age. If you're teaching younger, you can go younger. Just remember the sensitivity behind it. And we can have a look as an example. So I have some student examples of Miguel's story, and the other one I think is Anna's story. So if we click on Anna's story, I will not go through all of these. I just want to show you what it's like. So here is her story. And as we progress through it, we get a deeper understanding of the situation. We are made aware of the conflict that's developing. And then we have here our mission. What is it that we have to do? So it's great to keep this in mind that we want to protect Anna. Okay. So then this situation develops, and then we come to a decision-making process. So we have to decide based on what we know already where we are. If we click on the question mark, there's some extra information here that might help guide us to what we think is the best answer. I'm just going to randomly select the first one, and then this takes us to the most likely outcomes of the situation. And they continue along. I'm going through this a lot quicker than you would be in the classroom. There'd be a lot more processing going on. There's some more information here. So let's say tries to escape. Okay. I'm not doing this justice because I'm going through it quickly. There will be time at the end for you to explore a bit further in detail. I'm going to say wants to rebuild her family, her home. And we will get to the point where we have the end. So there's some more. There's always these question marks, further information. But let's just go to the end. Okay, so when we get to the end, we now have her journey. So I actually made it pretty far, and I don't know if it's good or bad because I didn't do the reading, but you can see how the story can end in several different possible solutions. Okay, so that's important to know because what I have the students do, and I'm going to go back to the activity here, is as they go through the stages, they write down what phase they're in, the decision they made, why did they choose that decision, and what were the results. So when they go to the next slide, they'll have what happened, and they can write down point form. So this is keeping a journal of their journey. And what I ask them to do is go through 3 attempts, so they get a really good understanding of the situation and how different decisions along the way can lead to different outcomes. And when they have finished their chart, that's when they go into their evaluation. They will write down what they've learned using these guiding questions, what they think the military and armed groups should be doing, what should governments, how might they be acting, how could Canada support these countries or individuals involved, what's the role of non-government NGOs, international community. And then I like them to use the geographic definition of what is where, why there, and why care. So the what is where, why there, why care are some of the more basic type questions. And it's the why, care, and what next are the key points of this evaluation. Why should we care about the situation and what needs to be done? And then we look at the concepts of geographic thinking, geographic perspective, which is throughout the conflict, why do certain groups or how do certain groups view the situation? How are they interrelated? What might be the significance of these locations? Does that mean that in this particular location, these conflicts are going to happen? And then looking for the future patterns and trends, what might be needed to stop these from happening again? The other scenario, and I'll go through it quickly because I have some student reaction to that as well, is Miguel's story here. So this is Miguel's situation, and he's the one dealing with environmental armed personnel coming into his community, looking at the environment and taking over the land, but the environment might get destroyed along the way, and what options he has in front of him. Again, question marks has further information. And then we have does he stay with his father, or let's say he thinks about it. And now you see what happens along the way. Okay, so I'm going through this a lot quicker than I would expect my students to go through. Just the process. I wanted to show you what's involved because I think it's important when we see some of the student work that they've come up with and the possible solutions to the situations. I'll say no. So this one is a little bit more involved, maybe because of the answers I'm coming up with. This was Miguel's story is the most recent story added to this list. let's see how we end up. You can see through the photos some of the information, landmines, deforestation, a lot of obvious sensitive material for the students to debrief afterwards. And for some students, we have to be really aware that this can be triggering. So giving that awareness beforehand, very, very important. So they can decide how they would like to participate, and in some cases may not participate because it might be too triggering for them. Oh, okay, so I think I'm coming to the end. Okay, so here is Miguel's journey that went way down this pathway. So students can try again. Let's see how they might be able to make different decisions and how these different decisions impact their life. So we'll go back to the situation. So that is the in-class activity that the students would be completing in a class. And I'll just put it out there, I use this with my world issues class. And they found the feedback I got from them was very positive. Here's some feedback from other students. These are not my students, but they were posted on the Red Cross website. This will just take a moment.
I think Anna's story was a really great eye-opening experience, just terrifying and so eye-opening from my perspective of privilege. Living in the place I do now, it's almost considered as normal there, which is kind of very depressing to know that this is a normal thing for some people. But it's almost accepted that they expect that to happen to them at such a young age. It's not just one person, it's the community, it's the people around her kids, and how that's going to affect the rest of their lives. I think it's a very good example of what women go through, especially in different cultures, in different settings.
Okay, so that's from Anna's story. My students did work on Miguel's story. I don't have videos of their, let's go here. I don't have videos of their work, but I have examples of the information that they were recording. So and I kept the last names off. So Charlotte's work here, you can see the information she put in to her journal writing along the process. And on her last one, she got to level 4 stages. And then as well, I have the rubric for marking their final work, their final communication piece. Here is her group discussion, her chat, where they were talking about looking at this other questions I had, frustrated with the decisions, have you come across situations where there was not one right decision, and the other reflecting type questions to help guide them through their process. And then her communication piece was a slide presentation. So dealing with the geographic questions she used in her work, why care, she had some information there, and what the roles of the military and maybe what the Canadian government might be able to do. And then for her, how she could become a citizen citizen scientist or a global citizen and get involved, dealing with some community situations to possibly bring more awareness and help support the situation. She talked about what the school might be able to do, again, bringing this global issue, making it local, and then her work cited, which is always nice. Oops, sorry, there's one other one I wanted to share, was Jasmine's work, because she created a kind of like a newspaper article, and the Canadian Red Cross actually had a competition for Miguel's story last year, and Jasmine submitted her work, and she placed uh, came up first place with her work. So that was really exciting. So she kind of created a magazine type situation, dealing with what the situation is, showing the understanding, explaining, using the map obviously to show where this issue is taking place, and brings in the information from the scenarios that she came across, and then again coming up with a possible solution to the situation and communicating it through social media, or like in this case a possible magazine. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. What I would really like you to do, I'll get out of the screen share. So if you have questions, please put in the questions. But more importantly, I think now that would be a great time. You can use the activity I shared with you, or just go through Forced to Fight, and develop your own deeper understanding of this tool and how you might want to use it in your classroom. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing. Okay. So let's see how we're doing sessions. Are there any questions with regards to this presentation for the people who are following along with the Canadian Red Cross simulation? So we're at 11:12. I think if you take the time to go through the situation, you'll have time. We'll finish it by break for sure. So I'm just trying to see, because I don't know how to use chat for my session. Okay. Oh, I found the chat. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so Catherine, you have a question about the French for this. Let me take a quick look. I believe there is a French button on the. If we go in the top right, we should be able to get this resource in French. So I will share that, Catherine. Let me just share the screen quickly. So for the French-speaking population, I introduce this in English. I do teach at a French immersion school, so the French geography teacher will use this resource in French by the FR in the top right corner, and then we get this information in French. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Catherine. Okay, great. So please do explore if there's any questions or any suggestions. Some of you may have gone and delivered similar type scenario-based activities in your classroom, following a different format. But if you have suggestions or any other resources you'd like to share, that'd be great. So in the 15 minutes remaining, please feel free to explore this resource. I am sorry, excuse me. I will stay on, no problem, for people who have questions. I'll share my screen so I can share some of the resources that people may have missed earlier on. Actually, what I'll do as well, I'll put in the I'll share this presentation again if people want to have quick access to this slideshow. Thank you very much, Tyrone, for your support and helping guide me through this. Yeah, so again, that's it. What I will try to do, Catherine, I am not a French immersion teacher, but I will try to get it translated through a colleague of mine, if that's okay with you. If you'd like to email me, and my email is, I'm just putting it in there. Again, my email is this. If you'd like to email me specifically, after this presentation, I will email my colleague right now and ask him to translate it for me, and then I'd be more than happy to share the presentation in French to you. Okay, excellent. You know what? Let me do that right now before I forget. All right, I'm almost done sending my colleague. Yeah, okay, so I've just sent my colleague the link, and hopefully he will get back to me shortly, and we can get it done and sent out to you, Catherine. That'd be great. All right. Thank you, Catherine. So yeah, about 10 minutes left. So if we want to carry on with the presentation, with your going through the activity, or going to lunch, that would be great. So I'm just going to turn my volume down, and I'm just going to explore through the website some of the different videos you may want to go through again to have a look at the situation and see how they can work well in your class. So there's, again, if you're, it is sensitive material, and if you want to share this with your administration a little bit about the resources beforehand to your administration so they have an understanding of what you will be delivering in the classroom, that would be a very good idea also, just so that if you get some concerned parents who may not like the idea, that the administration has a bit of a heads up. I did not do this with my world issues class. They were 18 years old. I did read them the sensitivity information from the TDSB guidelines, so I put it out there that way. I also, we use Google Classroom in our board, so I posted it as a note in the Google Classroom that we'd be going through this with some of the information, so that the parents did have access as well. So I didn't reach out to the parents specifically directly, but they had the information there available to them in case there were any concerns. And I also gave the students the option to opt out if at any point this information was too difficult for them to process at this time. And I think that's really important that we do keep the students' best interest at heart and give them alternatives in case the information is difficult. So each of these is a PDF, and just as an example of what the lessons are like, there's some detailed information, some definitions. You, as a teacher, you may want to go through what these terms are so students understand them. You can create the information as create a little slide presentation to help support the students so they go back and reflect on it. Thank you, Catherine. I will. So here we can see what it looks like with some extra information for the students and for the teacher when you want to deliver. Maybe take the information and condense it, because time constraints. How much time do you want to spend on the situation with your students? So they can explore what the laws are applicable, how they apply to each of the situations, the little lessons that you can have the students read. I would go through this as a teacher and pick out and choose the pieces that you feel are most appropriate for your students. As many good resources, these have been overbuilt, and every teacher has their own set of time constraints. So do go through them first before you print them off and use them in your classroom. Or like I did in my case, I used this resource that is kind of a framework that other similar type situations I've used in the past. So I was able to use this as a template and then put in the situation, the simulation information into this, and then deliver it through the class this way. Okay, so it is 11:25 now, and I think people might be sliding out for lunch, which is great. So yeah, see if there are no further questions. Enjoy your lunch and have a great rest of your day and rest of the summer for the teachers getting ready for school. And if you have questions, you can either put them into this chat or feel free to email me. Again, my email is just located at the top of the chat, ewan.geddes@tdsb.on.ca, or as Paul mentioned, you can contact Canadian Geographic Education directly. They'd be happy to answer some of your questions.